Welcome, everybody. We're back at MSP Confidential, and it's Friday again. I have been just on a rampage of travel lately, and so I've been having to take some of these and pre-record. But today we have the special privilege of having two guests from Syncro, Michael George, Kristen Costagliola from Syncro. Welcome to MSP Confidential. How have you guys been?
Hi,
Doing
Lewis.
great.
Yeah, great. Thank you
Thanks
very
for
much
having
for
us.
having us. Yeah, we really appreciate it. We'd love to be
Awesome,
here.
awesome. Yeah, we are live, which is great. Thanks for joining me. Um, Man, I have so many questions for you guys because it's not often I get to have a CEO and CTO duo together to get a bit of, the dissecting viewpoints on things from leadership to technology and all these things. So thanks for being here. And I'm going to just throw a question right out there to see, where we land. One of the topics that we chatted about getting for today's conversation was this idea of how to lead when the ground keeps shifting around you or beneath you, building a business, building a team, building technology, delivering happiness and innovation for customers and partners and MSPs and everything. So, I mean, I'll drop that right there and get maybe start with you, Michael, get some of your sentiments on this very challenging situation.
Yeah, no, and we are experiencing tectonic shifts in our market. So, of all the time that there is a level of maybe uncertainty, for a whole lot of people, it can be pretty daunting, and people don't want to go, start investing in things and doing things and end up not being particularly productive. And there's a bunch of things in the AI space which we can get to that I think
Yeah.
fit in that category in just a minute. But the thing that the approach that we're taking, certainly with our partner community, is really this, which is pay attention to what's foundational to your business already, anyway, and stick with that, right? And 98% of the small to medium business market operating system is Microsoft, as we all know. And so a lot of the things, that's an important grounding rod is pay attention and continue to wrap yourself around that. Number one. Number two is there's this sort of middle ground, which candidly, I think people need to be prepared to move quickly and experiment and be willing to throw certain things away, and be literally be prepared for that. Like, don't hold on to it for the sake of it. And again, AI is sort of right in that middle ground. And then it's sort of the top of that pyramid. Candidly, is be really transparent with your partner community for us, and if you're an MSP, with your customer. It's okay to say, I don't know. It's okay to say, we're figuring it out. We're working on it. And just a level of honesty and transparency at that level, I think, is absolutely critical. And we're at the precipice of one of those moments in time, again, around AI, that I view that sort of pyramid of thinking to be really important. So
Yeah, you talk about experimentation a little bit there, and I think that's an interesting one to maybe also get Kristen's view on because um, I think MSPs chase a bit of the best practice standards. Here's how everybody's doing, and whenever they have a question about anything, off we go to the communities, the Reddit, the whatever. Is like, hey, what is everybody doing for this? And so everybody seems to want to try and land on this very specific baseline or standardized way of doing a certain thing. And I think that maybe constricts a bit of the desire or capability to experiment with things. And I was curious, maybe Kristen, from your view as CTO, how do you make sure you guys are still experimenting? I think this is such a critical piece of just trying new things, breaking stuff, failing fast, and then be able to know when to pivot sooner than later, in most cases.
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's a really big challenge, especially in today's day and age, where literally the technology is changing daily. Sometimes hourly, new things are coming out. And, acronyms that we're using today that are commonplace didn't exist, 18 months ago or even 6 months ago. And so I think it's a big mindset shift for a lot of people. And engineers, technical people included. It can be hard to try to keep. It's exciting, but it's also like, man, this could be my full-time job, keeping up on everything that's changing out there. And so I think there's a couple of really important things. And one of the first ones is setting a culture where it's okay to fail. I think if you have a focus of 100%, you only celebrate successes and you only celebrate things that work, uh, it means that people are really afraid to try something that might fail. And today, with the things that are changing, things are gonna fail. Things are gonna fail and they're not gonna work. You might spend an hour or two with an AI prompt that you think might work, but gosh, it didn't work out as well as you thought it could. Um, and so I think you need to be okay with that, and you need to celebrate those failures and talk about those things. Talk about the attempts, like, hey, this didn't work today, but maybe in 6 months it will. And so I think that's a critical piece of all of this. And then I think one of the really hard things is making time to try stuff out and to just play with the things that are out there, whether it's personally or professionally. I found, I think, with especially with AI and with a lot of the things that are out, it's easier to use some of the things professionally, or I mean personally, than it is maybe in your professional work context. So using it to plan your vacation or to figure out what you're going to eat for dinner, or for breakfast, which, like, for me who has such decision anxiety, it's really nice to be able to say, okay, here's the things that I like, and it'll ask you questions. What do you want? What's your goal with this meal? And it'll give you some
Yeah.
options with help. Um,
I
so
find
I
the
think that's
follow-ups
important.
very helpful, actually. But it dawns on me that not once have I asked AI, to give me some ideas for dinner. I feel like that's definitely something that has escaped me thus far. Let me ask you about. You were talking a bit about this culture of failure or of allowing for failure, and I think that's super important. It's kind of like, experimentation resiliency is the thing that was coming to mind because I've been on this resiliency conversation for a little bit. There's leadership resiliency, of course, cyber resiliency. The context of my comment is that I was talking about travel resiliency because we have Air Canada, the flight attendants striking tomorrow, and so all sorts of shenanigans with flights are going on. But it feels like failure resiliency is also interesting because experimenting cannot necessarily feel great all the time. And failing is not a good feeling for a lot of people who are accustomed to maybe high performance standards. And so maybe I wanted to double click on this idea of a culture of being okay to fail. Like, what should that feel like or look like in a more nuanced way? Especially when people have come from a culture of high performance and succeeding at all costs, right?
Yeah, I think the most important things is setting some guidelines around areas and how you kind of iterate and look at the work that you're doing and experiment, just like you're saying. So there's times where failure is acceptable and exciting and like something that it's like, hey, we're experimenting, we're trying something new in these specific scenarios. Like, we're doing something internally and kind of playing around with some tasks and seeing where it goes. You want to iterate quickly. You want to find those failures quickly so that maybe you can get to success faster. And, I think there's always, we all know the saying that you learn way more from failure than you do from success. That's something I think a lot of people are taught growing up and as part of their just professional career. But it's hard to feel that in really professional settings. So that's a big piece. I think, is setting those guidelines and recognizing where you can fail and the areas where you need to have success. And so, for instance, we have a really big focus and process around quality that gets into production in our product, and quality around, and failure in that area is not really acceptable. Obviously, mistakes happen, things happen, and we're in the business of software. Unfortunately, we've all seen all of every
Yeah.
single big company, right, has had that issue. But it's something that we try our best to build processes around to keep ourselves secure and moving forward. Now, early on in the process, when you're iterating internally, when you're looking at what is the problem space we're trying to solve, how are we going to solve that? Those are areas where you really need to kind of, and should try to push the boundaries on where you can, where you're tolerant for failure, and what your tolerance as a business is, kind of to the extent you need to be.
Kristen, would you rather Software regressions or AI hallucination? Those are the only two choices on this question.
Oh man, that's a hard. In what context? I guess is that what context is my AI hallucinating?
Production releases, because if you've been vibe coding, if anybody's been leveraging AI to do
Oh,
some of their coding,
software regression, for sure. I think one of the things that is still so unknown about AI and is something that I think we have to continue to watch really closely is the security that's going to happen, like the security implications down the line and in the future, especially with all the vibe coding and with all of these systems that are essentially building the same software, right? We're going to have all these cookie cutter pieces of app, and if you build a backdoor or if there's something, we've already seen some of these things happen in the wild. And so
mm,
I would much prefer, I think, a software regression where the team can go in and fix it rather than an AI hallucination of something that you don't know exists for a while until it catches you.
yeah. Well, I mean, AI is, the topic is no longer optional. I feel like, but I feel like pretty much everyone now, it's to some degree, has started some kind of AI journey. Whether they're just starting to think about it, to actually starting to experiment with ways they can have their teams get a little bit more feet wet with AI and such like that. And so maybe Michael is a good person to start on this one, because you were saying backstage that you kind of going on your own personal AI journey to some extent. So I'm curious, how you bridge a bit of the personal AI journey with the company AI journey, and getting people excited about this experimentation at a company level.
Yeah, I'll step into that in just a second, but a little bit back to your earlier comment and Kristen's point around building a culture where failure is acceptable. In fact, it's expected, because you're not pushing the boundaries if you don't fail. What's not acceptable is not learning from those failings and incorporating those learnings into the next iteration and the next and
Mm,
the next. And from my, I started my career in an invention shop, and it was a shop that produced the Segway and wheelchairs that climbed upstairs and the Luke arm and the auto syringe for diabetic. So there was a lot of, and we always had a philosophy there where you tried quickly and failed and picked yourself up. And failure only existed when you stopped trying. That's the only time you really
mm,
fail. And so we encourage people to keep doing it. Do it quickly. Again, don't fall in love with something that isn't working. Just learn from it, pick yourself up, and get to the next level. The experience that I was having, and I've had a number of conversations with people. I was in my career at the time the internet boom happened, and I remembered sort of the hyper expansion of it, the fear, the hype, all the things that we're experiencing right now with AI. But I was an invited participant in a conversation. I have three children. One is still in college, and two are the start of their careers. And the whole discussion was with them was around, hey, Dad, as I look ahead in biology, for instance, what are the career paths that are most likely to get wiped out by AI? And which ones are the ones that are going to get enhanced by it? So think about that. Like, as a 20, something year old, embarking on a journey today where there is so much talk about the, elimination of, these white collar thinking jobs that you just got a college education, you just got a bio degree, you just got, all these other things that is now in some way at risk, and in other ways is hyper and enhanced by this incredible piece of technology. So it was a very enlightening experience for me to watch 25-year-olds talking through these dynamics, and it's very real. This is very, very real. I
mm.
think there's a lot of, as I said, I think there's a lot of hyped expectation that companies need to start delivering on, pretty quickly, right? Because it won't last in this sort of, hyper sensation forever. And so we have put a lot of our work not in the big hyperbole kind of, shoot for the moon kinds of things, but really a little bit more in kind of the practical day to day, line the teeth up on the gears. What's a day in the life of the journey of a technician? What matters most? What's rote? What can be eliminated? What can be reduced? What can be proactively and preemptively remediated, for instance? And there's a whole science around autonomic computing, the idea that computers can self-heal to some level. And there's a lot of things that it's really better designed to do than people are. And so these are the things that we are really not only encouraging, but mandating at some level our people in Kristen's organization and throughout other parts of the organization to say, try, learn. Here's a framework. It's not without boundaries, but and just start experimenting with this stuff and doing it. And then we do show and tell, and people learn from each other in it and everything else. And do it quickly. Fall down, pick yourself up, learn from it. Get on to the next stage.
You mentioned frameworks, and I feel like this is probably one of the most interesting uses of AI to me in the current moment, which is I'm constantly now like hearing patterns or first principles or things from other industries or other verticals or other contexts, and AI is particularly good at helping me recontextualize some of those into an MSP viewpoint or vantage point. I find that completely fascinating because it's very, very deep and very complete in its analysis of the parallels, and it's obviously very fast. It would take the average person days of just kind of rummaging through their head trying to connect all the dots and keeping track of all this in their head while they do that. And the point of that story is basically to ask you if you find yourself hearing or gathering inspiration from unlikely places or unlikely verticals or industries that you somehow can recontextualize into, Syncro. Maybe Kristen
Uh,
is
I
is probably
Take a run at it. I do, but it's very esoteric, which I'll come to in a minute. But let's let Kristen step in with a
all
more
right.
practical approach than the one I'm going to offer.
I think the answer is, of course, yes. There's a lot of things that, and to your point, like you can look at so much data today and see all of the things that are going on, understand parallels. Um, you know, Obviously there are some things that are slightly different on the MSP side, but a lot of it comes down to service, and it comes down to, communication with partners and with their customers, and how you're providing that service to them, and how you can use a lot of the parallels from what you see in other industries or what you see as tools that are helping with that, but also taking maybe what isn't working as well. I think is a pretty important thing, is seeing what is showing up in other industries, and saying like, okay, maybe that isn't what we want to do here. That's not the service, or that's not the value that we want to provide. So I think there definitely is, especially on the engineering side. There's so much that you just have to continue to learn from other people failing and succeeding, and what's going well, and where are you seeing changes being made, because again, changes are happening so quickly that you kind of have to use the parallels in other industries and from other companies, because no one can keep all of it in their head of all of the changes that are happening.
From your perspective, Kristen, do you feel like more people today, and maybe it's generational, maybe it's industry specific, um, value the clarity of what somebody that provides a service or product won't do, as opposed to maybe the ambiguous or murky territory of like, oh, we'll do anything you ask us to do, which I think is not necessarily helpful in most cases. But so I'm curious because this is a place where I think a lot of software companies live in with the feature requests situation, right? You could go and build what everybody wants and kind of give a very lukewarm message about whether or not you're going to do that. And I think that maybe creates more frustration than to be very, very clear about the things you're not going to work on and not build. But I'm curious your take on that.
I absolutely agree. I mean, as a CTO, but also as a just a user of products myself, you don't want a product that does too many things and not well, or not clarity on kind of what you're delivering. I think it's really interesting now. I was listening to a podcast earlier about delivery and around product discovery specifically, and how AI is kind of impacting discovering what people want built within their product. And one of the questions that was posed was, now that we have all these tools for delivery, for speed, of super fast prototyping and, AI coding and vibe coding, like, does it matter? Does discovery and understanding the problem space matter? And it was with Teresa Torres, who's a really well-known product leader, and she said, discovery is more important today than it was
Mm.
years ago, because of the fact that you can add so many features and you can add so much into it. The truth is that knowing what problem you're trying to solve and actually solving those problems instead of just adding features or just doing like things here and there, it's so much more important to have clarity on kind of what the direction that you're going in, what you're trying to deliver, and making sure that your clients know that too. I mean, that's been a big thing for us. Just this week, we came out with a very clear, much longer public roadmap at Syncro than we have in the past, to say, here's all of the things that are on deck that we've heard from you all that we're going to deliver. Here's the areas of focus that we have. And it helps, right? Because you don't, if it's something that you wanted but maybe isn't on that list, we can have the discussion of where it fits. But you also see the area of focus that we have as a company, and what our goals are for the MSPs on, increasing their efficiency and improving their profitability and giving them time back in their day, which all of us know the MSPs so desperately need.
Well, it's a rabbit hole though, because we create more time and then we go fill it with more little things to do. But I totally want to get Michael's esoteric take, because I feel like I'm part esoteric in many respects, and I always love to get into esoteric and philosophical conversations. But what was your take?
Well, if you look at what's happening with AI today in the world, I mean, the concept of AI dates back to the early 50s, as I'm sure you're aware. I mean, the whole 2001 A Space Odyssey, right, where HAL becomes smarter than the human and basically protects itself by eliminate, all that stuff was very early, set in the world. And it's really been the confluence of modern technologies, right? Modern data structures, data lakes, meta tagging, all of that, supercomputing. There's just been a confluence of things that's brought it to light today in the very practical, approachable, consumable, affordable ways, that it exists. And the idea of having, random immediate access, like, I'm a user of many different tools today, but my default go-to is ChatGPT 5.0 now, and the deep research component of it for certain things. And to see the amount of the library, the amount of information that this can index through and put together contextually, and it's extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. And it can go back and forward as long as you want, and it can do predictive analysis, and then therefore all kinds of things. I am a bit of a, I've been a almost lifelong, meditator, and there's a theoretical journey that gets you to what's called the Akashic Records. Are you familiar with that, Lewis?
No, no, but I feel like meditation can also help you prompt better in AI. But gives you the clarity,
But anyway, if you look up Akashic Record, you will see that there is a theoretical place that is a compendium of all things, thoughts, knowledge, etc., that ever existed, that exists today, and ever will. And if you look at the way these tools are pulling together information and data from all these incredibly different sources, and also doing the predictive analysis as to then therefore, if you ask it to, then therefore these things will happen. I have been following that theoretical journey, in my own spiritual life for many years. And this is really the computational version of it in my mind, which is, the compendium of
Yeah.
all things.
The AI version of confirmation bias in many ways. The cyclical things that we kind of now experience and kind of feel as part of, this world that we live in. And it's interesting to have some of those things sometimes confirmed because from a very esoteric, very abstract feeling. Um, this is interesting because I think this is where a lot of people are kind of having this snapback reaction to I guess the loss of personal touch, the loss of personal connections. We're going so deep on the machine conversations that I think it is kind of creating this reverse reaction of wanting to go deeper on the relationship building and the trust and the human to human connection. And we're seeing this with MSPs. Like there's been a conversation, which is a perfect segue into a bit of this second topic um, that we were kind of chatting about backstage, this idea that the tech really isn't the differentiator. I mean, when everybody has the access to this kind of technology ubiquitously, I feel like that is immediately commoditized and becomes like the baseline, and now we have to go search for other reasons to connect, for other reasons to engage, and for other reasons to create a business relationship for that matter. And so this is what MSPs seem to be talking about. It's like we have to get back to building trust, building relationships, and the parallel that Kristen talked about of the discovery is so true also between MSPs and their clients. Spending time to understand the real business challenge and then using technology to solve some of those issues or create impact there, but not the other way around. It's like, here's our stack type of thing, and you're gonna buy this because this is our standard. I feel like we're kind of coming out of this very big underneath from under this big rock of standardization that has created all these commoditization issues. But talk to me a little bit through how you view that in the MSP context, of course. And maybe Kristen, you have your own views about this from the technology perspective as well, since you're in the tech all the time.
Michael, you can go first if you want to talk from the
Yeah,
MSP, and then
well,
happy to jump in.
yeah, he referred to you, and I want to hear your thoughts, and I have my own ideas too. But and you're
Yeah.
right, Louis, to your point, you know, Kristen is our CTO, and I'm the CEO, and you don't get an opportunity to hear it a little bit from these both sides. So we want to fulfill that expectation. So, Kristen.
Well, I'll start from the MSP and then we'll hear maybe your side, then we'll jump into the tech specific. But I think from an MSP and just overall that you're seeing it, I agree. I think more people are leaning heavily into the connection, real human connection I think AI, yes, you can use like the AI therapist or you can chat with it, but like there's something about being in person with someone and having the real connection that you have with people around you. And we even last year, and as I've looked at differentiators from MSPs and the ones that I've talked to who have really like big growth and also just a lot of happiness in a lot of the things they're doing, it's the people that focus the most on the service and the connection that they're
Mhm.
providing to their customers, whatever that looks like to them. Whether that's quarterly or more meetings or going on site in person more frequently. I think that we're in this day and age where so much is text or remote or, and then being in person, you get a different side and a different experience of people when you're together in person than you do kind of over meetings or in just especially over text. I think tone is it's hard to read. We've known that for a long time. And I think different generations, it's been really interesting to kind of see that as generations have grown up and come into the workforce and how people kind of like are here at work and how they interact with others. But to me, it's proven and I feel like I shows over and over just the humanity part of it is so important. And the relationships that you build, I think, is so important on the MSP side.
Yeah,
Bingo.
agreed.
Yep.
Here.
Yeah. Bingo. And if I, I've just add to that a little bit, which is, again, if you can eliminate a lot of the, as I said, the time-consuming, rote, you know, part of the whole managed services equation. What you're doing is really freeing up time, for people to be engaged with their customer and to work more closely with them and their needs and understand their business. Again, as opposed to like being in the background, like doing a password reset or a disk defrag or it just any of this stuff. So it does give an MSP an opportunity to change the equation and the relationship with their customer. Doesn't mean they spend less time, just means they spend more time with them and working and thinking about their business. And in particular, and I'm going to pull on a string of, this concept of agentic solutions, Lewis. It's really an opportunity for an MSP to really become a close advisor to the business owner. If you're in a 22-person law practice, a 9-chair dentist office, an investment advisor, it doesn't matter, whatever it is, this will be an opportunity to operate at the intersection of the business analyst and the vertical business solution provider and the technology that's going to enable it.
Hmm.
And this is an opportunity for the MSP to seize that position and relationship with their customer that will be enduring. You talk about resilience, go be that strategic partner, go be that company that sits, with the owner of that law practice or whatever it is, any of these examples, and say, I can help you get ready to take, you're out, you're at conferences, you're reading newsletter, you're getting bombarded, AI this, agentic that. The MSP, are your partner to help figure out how you can optimize and how you can be, use this technology to the benefit of your practice and now work at the intersection of that. So this is that opportunity.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And a couple of times you've kind of referenced really the concept of focus is the best way I can describe it. Um, and it's so easy in this day and age to be distracted by all the different things that are coming out left, right, and center. And MSPs are traditionally, very well known for shiny object syndrome, because there are so many new startups and tools and software vendors and so on in this space. And I wanted to just get your take on focus because I feel like this happens in organizations of every size. There's a lot of problems to tackle, but the process of disseminating or analyzing, where we're going to have the best ROI for our time invested to solve an issue, and not sort of the whiplash of jumping from issue to issue. So I'm curious just your take on this from the Syncro perspective, because your software company, like ScalePad's a software company. I know we're always, dealing with. We could have a list of 100 things that are a problem that we need to work on, but we can't tackle everything at the same time, of course.
Yeah, yeah. I'll give a brief answer and then turn it over to Kristen because she and Dee Zeff, our chief product officer, who Lewis, you probably remember too. She was our chief product officer at Continuum as well. They are perhaps more challenged by that very issue as anybody could be, right? Because we have over 5,000 MSPs that are part of our network, and they're all important. But as I like to say, all partners are equal. It's just some are more equal than others, and we have to really listen to, as a proxy, what are the real core critical issues that they're facing, every day. And that helps us build kind of a Pareto of priority and so forth. But I'll just close from my portion of this, and I'll turn it over to Kristen with a great story that has been told many times in many ways. But it was apparently in a moment in time when Warren Buffett was visiting with Bill Gates. Everybody knows about their long history together, and apparently Bill Gates's mother at the time had asked Bill earlier in the day, "What do you attribute your success to, if you had one word to say?" And then later, when she encountered Warren Buffett, she asked him the same question. And both of them said the same thing, which was focus.
Mm.
So the discipline of no, all the things you're not going to do so that you can just get maniacally focused and do. And Kristen said it earlier. We could be a Swiss Army knife and be like okay at a whole bunch of things that really don't matter, or be really phenomenal at the one or two things that really matter. So.
Yeah, I agree. And I think for vendors, I think it's hard for to be a software platform and to have the, conviction to say no to the things that you aren't going to do and what isn't important and what aren't the biggest problems. And so I think that's where, again, not to go back to connection and go back to things, but I think that's where it's the most important to talk with the MSPs that are using. What are the problems that they are experiencing, and not necessarily what's the feature you want. That's a very there's a difference between those two questions. It's like, talk to
Yeah.
me about what are you actually doing with your in your day to day. What does your actual time look like, and where are you spending it? And then thinking about, like, okay, and how can we solve some of those problems? And I think, to go back to the question right before this around the tech, is it's not really the tech. The tech is just a tool, right? The tech is only going to serve you as much as your processes and you have the standardization to kind of use those tools. The tools are going to be as supportive as you can actually leverage them. And so I think that's a really important thing. And it's so hard for companies, especially MSPs, because you feel like you're, running constantly, you're sprinting at the very next thing. And it can feel daunting and impossible to say, I need to slow down and I need to stop and I need to figure out my process and I need to figure out what are the most critical things for me to do for my business so that I can get back on and speed up, or have higher growth or have other, areas where I can have focus. And so, but I think that that's critically important. And the businesses that we've seen really, really succeed are the ones that have taken that time to say, let's shore up our business processes. Let's figure out our stuff internally. And then we'll figure out how to use these tools and layer those in. It's not really like, let me use the tool and build my business around that. It's like, let me build my business, figure out all the pieces, and then let's put the tool in and automate the areas so that
Mm.
you know, uh, we have improvements and we have efficiency, and continue to reevaluate that because it does change frequently.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would add to that, remember we're a we're a software company. We are well funded. We have, a meaningful allocation of resources for innovation. Let us experiment. Let us fail. If when you're an MSP in this day and age, margins are thin, time is precious, and it can be a very expensive endeavor, to experiment per se. And so let your vendors do it. Let companies, that are well funded and purposefully funded for for that intent,
Yeah.
you know, let us do it. We'll get you there.
Yeah, I mean, I've been hearing the whole conversation, this real suggestive talk track around the experimentation. I think it's important to do. I remember I had a conversation a while back. I don't remember with who, but maybe the consensus of that conversation was that small companies perhaps think they can't be innovative because they can't dedicate a team to go experiment on stuff. But kind of the conclusion was it's not the people, it's more about the mindset and maybe trying to find the places where experimentation would be useful in any particular situation like that. And I feel like MSPs, they don't realize it, but they're always experimenting. This is the whole thing that happens with shiny object syndrome is like, I'm going to go try this tool. Oh, it has a nicer button. I think I'm going to switch to that one. And so I think there's plenty of experimentation there, but maybe not harnessed as well as it could be for the kind of impact that we want to get out of it. But anyways, that's just amusing, esoteric thoughts here on Fridays at noon. So lots that we could get into there. Guys, I'd love to understand a bit of what's happening at Syncro at the moment. Maybe you can, give us the Coles notes of what's the most exciting thing that's happening right now. What are you looking forward to coming up in the next few months?
Well, I'm going to give you maybe a little bit of a teaser, frankly, because we don't like to announce things, before they're in like production and in our customers' hands and all of that. So I do want to be cautious a little bit there, but I will tell you that we're very much as a company on a mission to help bring the MSP market back to basics. And
Mm,
a lot of, we announced a product earlier this year called XMM, and it was the first and still remains the only product in the marketplace that is bringing Microsoft management capabilities, the whole tenant and policy management capabilities, to market in combination with an RMM and a PSA tool, right? Because those things they're not meant to like be connected and API'd and all that the way that some of these independent providers are trying to come into the market and saying, hey, we're going to reduce your tech stack and allow you to use the underlying core assets of Microsoft, but you got to buy this one more thing and you really don't get to eliminate anything. We actually are doing that very much, and are displacing a lot of those first generation Microsoft management tools because of that. So I call it a forward innovation, but it's also kind of a back to basic. Like all of these things, Microsoft is going to be a major contender in the ITSM for the MSP. It's just a fact. They've been closing in and kind of nibbling away at the cookie for years, and now between Intune and Entra ID and what they've done with Defender and Sentinel, if you could make those things easy to use, multi-tenancy, approachable, manageable as an MSP, what power, that you would be harnessing by being able to do that, right? This
mm,
is a world-class large enterprise environment. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're extending and enhancing the underlying core assets that every MSP's technician are trained on, frankly, right? If you're not, you're a Microsoft certified engineer in this business in one level or another. And so we're really bringing the market back to basics and enabling them to harness the power of these things that you're likely already paying for anyway. You're just not able to really use properly. So I'll kind of leave it there, and I'll say that we do have an announcement coming up mid-September for something that'll be in EA, that'll be in generally released to the world in October 1st.
mm.
So stay
Thank you.
tuned.
Thank you, Michael. Kristen, I want to maybe set you up for a comment on that as well. From going back to this idea of learning to say no really well. Um, I'm reminded of like how at Amazon reInvent every year, it feels like if they launch any particular feature, they might kill 100 startups, because they had built an entire ecosystem around basically a feature that was needed in Amazon. Um, and so I just love your thoughts on how you think of avoiding that trap of building features and rather thinking a little bit more long term.
Yeah, I think for us, again, it's all around focusing on where MSPs have to spend their time and where MSPs need the most kind of automation, efficiency, productivity, profitability, and leaning into that to kind of help them use the things they're already paying for. Because when you think about, to Michael's point and to it's like you're already paying for this Microsoft license, and Microsoft is like they have fantastic point solutions in a
Mm,
bunch of areas, but actually leveraging them, especially as an MSP, is incredibly difficult. Microsoft does a ton of things really well, but one of the things that they don't really do super well is kind of the user experience and the management at a higher level. And so one of the things that we kind of saw in the market is that there's a lot of similarities between what an RMM does for the endpoint that we think should happen the same way in the cloud. And when you think of from a security perspective, the new security frontier, it's kind of been the security frontier for a while, is the identity, is the cloud. It's not the endpoint as much anymore. And there's been so much of a focus in the MSP space around the endpoint for so many years that shifting to the cloud, in not a shifting to the cloud of like your workloads or your other pieces, but just of your foundation. Like people's foundation is completely changing from on-prem AD, from file servers to OneDrive to Entra. And so our thought overall of the ecosystem has to shift with that. And so, that's really where we've leaned into, and that's how we figure out what to say no to. And what's the important things for us to go towards is like what helps efficiency for MSPs and what helps them get time back in their day, and where can we give them kind of profitability, where can we give them and their technicians time to do the things that are really important that they should be spending their time doing.
Wow, fantastic. Love those thoughts, and such a critical thinking piece of like designing our own future. Even for MSPs, I think this is part of the challenge of our day, is figuring out how not to fall into the trap of these little ancillary things that are just going to be distractions ultimately, and just getting back to that focus. So I love that sentiment. Guys, any final thoughts? I am so thankful for you guys to have come on and spend some time chatting about these, some esoteric, some very technical things. But it's great to kind of do a little bit of that tangent off into this space that is maybe we're all going through it to some extent. But any closing thoughts?
Kristen, why don't you start?
Really, it's just thanks for having us. It's really great to be here. I think I've been in the MSP space for a long time, and I love this community. I love seeing the success of this community. And I think to Michael's point that of course we're at a big change overall in the world, but I think there's more opportunity for MSPs to really be that leader and driving so much forward into the next phase, and being that, to Michael's point, like that partner to your end customers, and continuing to show that human connection. So really glad to be here. Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Yeah,
my pleasure.
same, Lewis. Thank you. You and I've known each other for a long time, and have been in this category. This is year 15 for me, with a little hiatus out from after the ConnectWise Continuum acquisition, and I too, I think the channel, as it's referred to, the community is a really special place. I will tell you, I think it is, and I've worked across a few other industries in my career, but I don't think there's anything quite like this one, where it's collegial, where MSPs help each other at a peer level, where there are communities for opportunities to learn, from each other, and all of that. It's a really very special place and thing. And we are grateful to the community, to the channel, for our opportunity to participate with you and to be a part of this. And we, want to continue to invest in it, and invest in the future and the success of our partners and the MSP community at large. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys. This has been Michael George, CEO at Syncro, Kristen Costagliola, I hope that said that correctly, CTO at Syncro. I'm Luis, your host here of MSP Confidential. We're here every Friday at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, and we hope you'll join us for a future conversation. Until then, Michael and Kristen, thanks so much. We'll see you out, hopefully, at some event in the near future. And until then, hang out backstage for a moment, and everybody else, we'll see you very soon. Thanks.